But our rights are under assault. And I know this is a pro-Second Amendment group who cares dearly about your ability to defend yourself and your family. But it's more than those rights that are under assault. As our liberties are under assault every day, I heard a political speaker just recently talk about every time you pay a tax to the federal government, you lose some of your liberty. You are giving liberty up so that the government can do certain things. And there are things that the federal government should be doing, like national defense. Contrary to what the president believes, Islam is a great threat to freedom around the world. I hate that he doesn't see that, but luckily most Americans see that. When we're facing our challenges to our freedoms, we always are encountered by somebody who says, well, that won't happen here. The Constitution will protect us. We hear that all the time. I'm fortunate enough to be on a number of radio shows with different hosts around the state, and they are always saying things exactly like that. That will not happen here. Judges, and let's just say the homosexual marriage debate. I don't care where you are on that issue from a moral standpoint, but the United States Constitution, nowhere in it, no which way or how, guarantees the right to homosexual marriage. And I promise you that 10 years ago, somebody, somewhere in this state said, don't worry about that, the Constitution will protect us. And everybody agreed with it. So what we have now is what they call a living Constitution. And we hear people say it, and it ought to scare us. It really should. Think about it from a literal sense. If I told my 8-year-old that this piece of paper over here was alive and could change just at a moment's notice, in his mind he would visualize almost a monster. Something out of a movie where the little clown doll comes alive and wipes everybody out. That's kind of what we have if we have a living Constitution. We have a piece of paper that can come alive, change its form, and take all your liberties and freedom away. We shouldn't even tolerate or even pacify the people who believe and talk about a living Constitution. They should be afraid of it too, but since they have the federal courts and the federal judges, they think it's okay. But that monster will eventually come for them also. I have a lot of friends in the Republican Party who don't want to talk about gun rights. They don't want to talk about pro-life issues. They don't want to talk about Christian morality issues. And they advise us all to just let those things go because they don't matter to them. That we should all focus together and only worry about financial issues. And then we would have some sort of wonderful utopian country in their opinion. But I'd like to ask them, if you throw away your right to defend yourself, which is God-given. I mean, it's just one of the first natural laws. That's it. That's one of the first things that happens. If you were a caveman, you had a right to defend yourself from the caveman down the street. You also had a right to defend what little food you could scrape up by hunting and gathering from the caveman down the street. So it's one of the first things that happens. But if they can cast all that aside and pretend it doesn't matter, what happens when we do that and we say, well, we're not going to worry about those pro-life issues. We're not going to worry about those pro-gun issues. We're not going to worry about gay marriage issues. And flowers are going to grow everywhere. You know what that guy's going to say? He's going to say, you can't take my last penny. That's wrong. And what's he going to base that on? He's already said all these other things don't matter. Right is right and wrong is wrong, and we need to defend them from top to bottom. Now, I've kind of scratched these things down I want to talk about on the way, and if you can see my notes, it's pretty. You should not. Is it illegal yet to write and drive? I know you can't text. Possibly. If I paid the sheriff for a permit to do it, I bet I could but I could carry that pen in my car. For those of you who may not know, I was the sponsor who carried what was called a couple years ago the Omnibus Gun Bill. I had this knack for carrying things that ended up being called omnibus. I was publicly educated, therefore I had a hard time spelling omnibus, but it sounds good at the time. I'm not still real sure what it means, but the Omnibus Gun Bill. And we started out with what was a very, very good piece of legislation that set out to fix or straighten out or clarify the things that weren't clear in state law. Now, let's get one thing straight. I know there's probably somebody in here, and I fielded these emails constantly, who said, we don't need any gun laws because our Constitution guarantees that we can carry, therefore, we don't need them. We just need to go by the Constitution. You know what? I agree wholeheartedly. But the problem was, something a lot of people don't know about. Many of the gun laws in the state of Alabama were basically passed for racist reasons. And there are black Alabamians who understand that. And I want to give a little shout out to a friend of mine that was in the legislature, Roger Smitherman. We don't agree on a lot of issues, but he was instrumental in helping me get those bills passed and getting them out of the Senate, especially out of committee. Eddie was there, and Gerald was there. And when you have to rely on a guy who's mostly a liberal Democrat when it comes to social issues to get your gun bills out because Republicans want to run and hide and pretend they couldn't make it to the meeting, we got some issues. And we need to remember that. But we were able to get that out. It did go to the House, and it had some major changes. The two groups that were most opposed to it were the sheriffs and some of the business community. Not all the business community, but some of the business community. And some of them both are still trying to yank people around when it comes to that. They use taxpayer money to go buy anti-gun stickers to stick on business owners' front doors. The business owner thinks it must be the law because they walk in and say, well, according to the law, we want to give you this sticker. Okay, great. Even though, we keep asking people, do you really think the criminals care about the stickers? We were in a hearing one day, and it was pretty heated between me, and I don't remember who the personalities were, so just plug in whatever sheriff you want. And I said, they were just talking about how awful this was, and I said, I've got it. We can solve this problem. And the room got quiet. And I said, if we will just make it illegal to kill people, we won't have to worry about this. It's kind of like a time I asked the District Attorneys Association, I said, since we can't carry a usable pistol in our car, could I carry it if I riveted the holster to the outside of my car? Because then it would be like a horse. And they just usually roll their eyes at me and say, just stop. So there's so many things in the law that weren't straight, and there's still issues in the law, but we're way ahead of where we were. But we've got to continue to work on it. And like I said earlier, we've got to be ever vigilant. And we have to make sure our elected officials know what we believe in and understand what we're trying to get. Then last year we came and I had the bill that was going to allow us to carry a usable weapon in your car, which makes perfect sense to me. And let's be honest about it. This is not an issue that has anything to do with safety. This is an issue that has everything to do with the fear that there's not going to be as much money in the budget if they don't make you pay for the right to carry a weapon in your car. Now, and I think somebody probably has audio or video or something that has the Sheriff's Association president saying that very thing in one of the committee meetings. But now they're back to safety and making sure that people are safe. So that's going to be a battle that Gerald's taking on. I think he's going to have a very good chance of getting it out of the Senate. No telling what will happen in the House. But we're going to have to apply pressure to the legislature and do our best to get that done. You know, it's funny to me that we have a society that worries to no end about whether or not somebody can pay for something. We worry completely about whether the poor will be able to do this or do that or do this or do that. Well, if you're the poor single mom trying to raise a couple of kids, is it really right for us to demand 25 or 30 bucks so that you can have that small little pistol that your grandfather gave you in the car to maybe defend yourself and your kids if your car breaks down on the side of the road in the middle of the night because you're having to work 2 jobs? Really? That's where we are? But that's what we need to be talking to people about when the other people on the other side want to talk about safety all the time, and it has with safety. So I wish Gerald all the luck in the world, and we'll be helping any way we can to help Gerald out. There was something in the speech, I'm giving some speeches around the state, and the title of it is Freedom is Scary. And I really think a lot of people need to hear about that. One of the things I discuss is the Second Amendment and how we should be very concerned when we want to set down markers. I was one of those guys that would sometimes say, well, you know, that makes sense, but we got to be so careful about what we agree to for whatever reason. A couple of great examples. One is, I used to think that I wanted to put, let's see, so I have my driver's license just like you do. Eddie, how am I doing on time? 15 more. I'm finished. Okay, I have my driver's license. Then I have my pistol permit that Sheriff Hale does graciously still let me have. Good deal. And I want to say something about Sheriff Mike Hale. Sheriff Mike Hale supported our legislation last year. He really did. So he deserves a lot of credit. And Sheriff Mike Hale's in a county that for your concealed weapon permit, it's like $5. Wouldn't you like to live there? Yeah, much better. So I have my pistol permit. Then somewhere in here, oh, that's my one to get in the ball game. Let's see, is a hunting license. So I used to think it was this great and wonderful idea. Why can't we just put all that on my driver's license so I don't have to carry a hunting license and I don't have to carry my pistol permit and all that? Now, listen. All right. So that's where we were. Then a few weeks back when I was doing some research for my little speech, I realized that Florida and Utah, I think it is, and if I get the states wrong, don't hold me to it because it doesn't affect the story at all. They went ahead and did that. They were progressively forward-thinking, going to make things easier on people. Probably was a pro-gun guy that got some of this stuff done. Well, the problem happened when some people from those states were traveling through a northeastern state who does not smile upon your right to defend yourself, and they were pulled over. Sir, can you let me see your driver's license? Yes, sir. You know, you can't look at anybody anymore. You know, when I was younger, you used to be able to get out of the car. And if you didn't get out, you know, they couldn't see you, so that was a problem. And then the first time I got pulled over for speeding after they changed all those rules, I didn't know them, so I get screamed at through the microphone, get in your car like I'm a terrorist. But so I give them my driver's license, or they give the driver's license in the other state, and they look on there, and guess what? It now has a demarcation on it that says you have a hunting license or a concealed weapon permit. And in that state that frowns upon your rights, they decided, well, I think we might smell marijuana in your car. I think I do. I think I need to search it. So you had multiple people in one of these northeastern states, because their driver's license said, beep, 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 I'd like to have a concealed weapon. One of the guys was carried to jail. He had his gun in his car, in the back, in a box, like he thought he was supposed to do. The problem was the box was not locked. So he had violated the gun law of that illustrious state. So now, my point is, be careful what we ask for. I no longer think that's a good idea. I'm not for doing that anymore. I'll carry my 5 cards, and it'll stick out in my pocket. And I say that to get to 2 other points. One is there's some legislation federally that I was very excited about when I read the headline about the federal government saying that your concealed weapon permit will work in every other state. Kind of a national reciprocity. And I haven't read the legislation, and I know you guys will. But I don't want my name on a national database that says I have one so that all the other states can do it. So that's something to worry about. And I don't want any more increases on national background checks that they keep records of, even when they say they don't. Because does anybody believe a word that comes out of this administration? I was on the, it's funny that they've just now come out, and Jeff Sessions was reporting on some of the illegal immigration stuff, saying how that this administration had stretched the truth on how many people they had deported. And I was on the radio in Great Britain, some BBC morning show. And by the way, if you text their host back and forth in your own Sprint, it costs you like $2, so don't do that. I didn't know that till the bill came, so I was like, why am I spending $20 texting some, English company? But they asked me, they said something along the lines of, yeah, but President Obama has deported so many people. And I said, well, I don't know if y'all have noticed in England, but the president has a tendency to lie. And they didn't know what to say. But it's amazing what goes on in this country. So we've got that federal law we need to look at real close, or the federal proposal. And here's one of those other things that we need to be very, very careful about, is that we are very quick to say, because they put us in a box. They say, well, you don't want a person who's mentally unstable to carry a weapon, do you? Well, a rational person is going to say no, because who are we thinking of in our mind? We're thinking of somebody off the movies. We're thinking about Jason or that little clown I was talking about earlier that comes to life. We don't want those people carrying weapons. But here's the problem we've got, folks. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that would be reasonable. But think to yourself how many times you've watched a national TV show, a national news show, whether it's after what happened in Connecticut or Colorado or wherever, and there is somebody on there who carries weight politically. And what do they say about somebody who believes they have a right to carry a weapon? That they're crazy. Exactly. And to back that up, in case you didn't know, and you're really bored, go and find the new handbook that came out for psychiatrists, and look at what all is considered mental illness under the new book. And I can promise you, I qualify. There's even one that they're floating out now, which is that you have great concern about the government. So now you have returning veterans who they don't want to be able to carry a weapon. You've got new classification right from the doctors saying all these new things are mental illnesses. There were never mental illnesses before, but they are now. And then you also have the thing that says, well, once they say you did have some kind of mental illness, say you had a breakdown because your job was so rough and you were working 80 hours a week and finances were going bad, well, who comes back and says, well, you're okay now? Nobody, because that's not in line with what they want to do. So we need to be very, very careful while we're being vigilant at what we agree to. Because there's many times that we storm the castle with our pitchforks and torches, and the establishment gives us what we asked for. The problem is we didn't think very much about what we were asking for. And they're more than willing to give it to us after they whipped us into a frenzy. I've turned over. So the last thing, to not leave us on a negative point, is that vigilance includes joining hands with other groups. We have a real problem. I wish I'd written down this quote, but in my Freedom is Scary presentation, my Freedom Tour, as Yellowhammer called it. I didn't make that up, but I like it now. We have a quote about, I think it's the 167th Rainbow Regiment in World War I that was made up of all Alabamians. And General Plummer says something, I think MacArthur says that their exploits were never matched in the history of warfare. And then General Plummer, I think, says, it's the line about, in time of war, send me all the Alabamians you can. And I love that quote. I mean, because we have that heritage. That's where our people are from. That's just, we are about, let's go fight it out and do what's right, no matter what. The problem is the quote didn't end there. It had a comma. You've probably never heard the rest of it because it's not quite as flattering. But it says, in time of peace, for Lord's sake, send them somewhere else. And if that is not the truth, I don't know what is. Because if we know who the enemy is, we're all together to get them. But when we're not sure who the enemy is, we have a tendency to eat each other alive and decide that each other are the enemy. And we need to come together. There are people in this room who probably don't care about pro-life issues. I understand that's not your issue. But you know what? We're not strong enough to defend all our liberties by ourselves. Those people, I say the exact same thing when I get a chance to speak to them. They've got to realize that in order to get things done, they get line up beside the pro-Second Amendment folks. And then those people I was talking to earlier that only care about fiscal issues, they've got to realize that they're at risk also, unless they come alongside y'all and the pro-life folks and the pro-traditional marriage folks, because we have been so splintered, and we've been told you can't work with them, and we've been told you have to be laser focused, that we don't build those coalitions that are necessary for us to win. And you know what? Our backs are against the wall, and we have to decide that we're going to win this thing. And no matter what it takes, we're going to have to win. And we're going to have to work hard at it. We're going to have to help some people that drive us crazy at times so that we can win this thing. Because liberty matters and freedom matters. And there's people a lot smarter than me that said if liberty and freedom, the candle is put out or the flame is put out in this country, it'll never happen again in the history of the world. And that's too important for us to give up. So I can't tell you how much I appreciate you for what you do, but we're going to have to turn it up a notch. And if you think you're working yourself to death, just look at your kids and grandkids and realize that one day you don't want to have to look them in the eye and say, you know what, I just got tired and sat down and watched football. We just can't afford that. So I appreciate you greatly. Thank you for letting me come speak to you today.